forgot we had the Hagah. I forgot that we had the Hagah of Zion Tishrei on the bottom on page Yud Aleph. So maybe we'll just go back to that so we didn't skip anything. And we did the wrong. Okay. You have it over there on the bottom?
On the bottom of Yud Aleph or on the bottom?
On the bottom of page Yud Aleph with the Zion Tishrei. It's like a footnote.
Yeah, it's on Test Vav for me for some reason. Okay.
Oh, okay. I have an old one. In any case, he was saying that, he based the Sefer on the Rambam, on the Shari Tshuva. This is Alipola Beini HaKoire. Don't be surprised. Since this is a halacha sefer. Lamani maybe become a makamis rise sefer Shari Tshuva or Binu Yoina. Shumikal Sefer Musa. Why am I bringing in many places proof from Shari Tshuva or Binu Yoina, which is called a Musa sefer? You learn it in Seder Musa. So don't be surprised. He says, because if you learn the Sefer correctly, you'll see in many places that he was careful, even though it is a Sefer Musa, Rabbeinu Yonah was careful not to say things that aren't halacha. He didn't go out of the gather of din, but with proper din and Lashon Horah, he says, and specifically when he discusses the Lashon Horah, b'chol inyan v'inyan shekasav, whatever he wrote, yesh hazeh makor min hashas. There's a source for it in Gemara. V'kasher navar mitz Hashem b'fnei haSefer, as I'll explain, says as we learned the Sefer Chafetz Chaim, the halachos, and it's something for Shari Tshuva. Says the Chafetz Chaim, that he will show and explain how you see that it's sourced in Gemara. Just the Rabbeinu Yonah wrote in shorthand, and didn't bring his sources, as was the method of the Rishonim when they wrote their Sfarim. He says, still, after all of that, as a rule, generally, I didn't rely only on Rabbeinu Yonah. He says generally his rule of writing the Sefer was that when it was coming to a kula, that then he many times would have relied just on Rabbeinu Yonah, even if he didn't have another source. When it was coming to something that, let's say, was more of a chumrah, there he wouldn't rely only on Rabbeinu Yonah, he would find another source in the Rishonim. He says, but it came.
Well, are we trying to make it look more like chumrah or more like kula here? What's the goal?
Halacha.
No. In halacha, the Chafetz Chaim many times would come to a conclusion about a specific situation that it's okay, like it's mutter, and it's there. He would sometimes rely just on Rabbeinu Yonah as the source. What is he going to say? He's going to say, you might say, to say for Musa, right? So that's what he's saying. No, first he's saying no. It is a Sefer Musa, but everything Rabbeinu Yonah was careful was to write the Ikar Halacha. He's saying, and number two, generally he didn't only use Rabbeinu Yonah as a source for the halachas he was writing, unless what he was bringing from Yonah was a kula in halacha, that it's okay to do it, right? So, the argument is, don't bring Rabbeinu Yonah. He's a Sefer Musa. Sefer Musa is mach. Right? He's saying, no, can't do this. He says, I only use Rabbeinu Yonah as a rule. He said, as a source alone, when based on Rabbeinu Yonah, it was okay to do it. As you will see in the Sefer. He says, I know that it could be says, I know that there will be people who their desires are to find fault in other people, and they're already accustomed, it's habit by them, that this bitter Avera, that nothing's going to help. Nothing's going to convince them to change. He says, and I know that people like that, when they learn Sefer Chaim, and they find the kula there, where the Chofetz Chaim says it's okay to say it, they won't take out the time to see, but what are the conditions that Chofetz Chaim explains that make it okay to say it, right? There's a comment and based on what they're seeing, they will be matter a bunch of things that I never meant to be matter. And it won't bother them. Because they're going to say, it's okay, I saw it in the Sefer Chofetz Chaim. But being that they want to speak to Lashon Horah, they're not going to learn the halacha well and see when and when not does that kula apply. But the Chofetz Chaim says, I know that this, in a way, might be a stumbling block for them. He says, Achamati, but said the Chofetz Chaim, interesting thing. He said, I said to myself, I'm not going to hold myself back from doing good for those who want to know, who want to change. Because of these people who don't want to change, and they might blame and be toilet what they're saying based on something that says in the Sefer. I'm not gonna therefore not write the Sefer for those people who want to learn and know the halacha correctly. Says like Chazal tell us in the Gemara Baba Basra, Amora said it, umehaikra Amora. Based on this pasuk, Yisharim Tachi Hashem, the ways of Hashem are Yishar. Tzadikim Yelchubay, the tzadikim go with that. The rest says Urishayim Yikashlubo, and those Rishayim who want to will use this actual Torah as their book to stumble. There will be people who will argue and minimize the importance of learning this. And they're going to say, use a chazal. The Gemara does say in certain places it's preferable that people should do the Avera b'Shogeg rather than do it on Mezid. He says, but they're wrong for two reasons. Number one, something that's explicit, halacha that's explicit in Torah, we don't use this reasoning of mutav liyashogeg. But Lashon Horah chitzu davar mefurash b'Torah. Is this in Lashon Horah?
Yeah, I mean, but also keep like something like Lashon Horah, there's a visual like effect. It's directly affecting a person or other people or groups versus something like, I mean, that's like things that are ben adam lechavero, for sure, because it has implications. Some ben adam lemakom, okay, you can understand that God can be more forgiving for X, Y, or Z, but like, something like this, like the whole concept of Lashon Horah, it's not just a mitzvah, there's a social application to these things. You know what I'm saying? Like, no?
I don't understand. Are you asking or supporting?
I'm supporting, but I'm saying, but I'm suggesting the reason would seem to be a lot more pashut than something like, tefillin, or something that is only lamako.
Well,
as a reason.
I don't know why you consider more pashut. I mean, he's bringing here a halachic concept. That sometimes it's better not to teach people they're doing wrong and let them continue doing it wrong with shogeg, rather than I should teach them and then they won't listen anyways and they'll do it b'mezid, right? And he says there will be people who come and argue and say, yeah, so it's not, don't learn the halachas of Lashon Horah. Don't learn these halachas because you're going to set yourself up for such a scenario. People aren't ready for it, and now that they know it's also, they'll do it anyways. So he's just, what he's doing is giving us the rules. He says, 1 minute, you got to know this rule of mutav she'ashogeg. There's rules to it. It's not an open-ended concept that you use in every halacha. He says, first of all, it's not applicable if it's mefurish in the Torah. That's all he's just saying. Don't come with that argument because that argument is false inherently. That this rule does not apply to a halacha that's explicitly written in the Torah. And Lashon Horah is explicitly written in the Torah. And number two, he says, "In Kain Lenuma the Rabbin Huchas Gezer." He says, so if so, you're going to come with that argument. We shouldn't teach people the halachas of stealing. The Gam Zeh Koshmoy that came. It's very hard to fulfill it, to be totally clean from stealing. Gemara itself says in Baba Basra. He says in parentheses, even though by Lashon Horah it says it's worse than Gezel as far as people stumbling, because there it says that when it comes to Lashon Horah, everybody trips in it. Well, by Gezel, I think it says most people. It says, hello, lo yomer rak ba'avak. But the Gemara there clarifies that when it says that everyone trips in Lashon Horah, again, and that means everyone who is not careful and learns the halachas, that's talking when you're talking about Avak Lashon Horah, but not Lashon Horah itself. Could it be? Everybody's over Lashon Horah. In any case, he says, so if you're going to use that as an open-ended rule of so don't teach anybody anything. Don't teach them that it's wrong to steal, because that's a very hard thing, especially when you're in business and there's a deal and you could lose your pants or you could make a lot of money. There's a lot of rationalization going on there. So he says, therefore, so at least the benefit of learning these halachas, at least you won't transgress Lashon Horah that's black and white. And even from Avak Lashon Horah, which we'll learn later in the Sefer when and what that is, you'll also be able to protect yourself. If you take it to heart and, work on yourself. When the Gemara Baba said that there's nobody who doesn't transgress it, any mean, there's no way I could be clean from it. It meant bistama. It means a person who's not careful will always stumble. But someone who will learn, for example, this sefer and work to apply it, he could be careful. He says also we shouldn't teach Hochas Shabbos. We know that considered the very hard. So therefore, he says you can't throw around that rule loosely and say, so it's better they don't learn Hilchos Lashon Horah because anyways they'll continue speaking. He says in number further, he says, how could it be if that's true? So how did the Gemara in Erechin, or the way they vowelize it is Arachin, where there the Gemara spells out the rules. The Gemara asks, what's Lashon Horah? Nurabe Planya. Gives an example where someone answers, we'll see it also in the Sefer, where's there fire? Where can I get some fire? It says, and also if we learn the pasuk itself, there's an explicit pasuk. Remember what Hashem did to Miriam when you left Mitzrayim, which was that Miriam spoke Lashon Horah about Moshe, right? And the pasuk commands us, Zocha, remember. So you can't say it's better not to learn it. Behavior Ramban Beberu Shem Hasifri. That this pasuk is teaching us you always have to remember Bapeh. There's at the end of Shachris, there's 6 Zechiros. This is one of them. And Ramban writes in the name of the Sifri that a person has to constantly verbalize Ma'aseh Miriam, what happened by Miriam, because by doing that, we will appreciate how serious the Sefer is. According to those people who are going to argue and say, Mutav Shirshayik and Adarabah, should be just the opposite. Let us not remember. And then we'll be shaking. Certainly a Torah the Torah understands people's minds. That yes, we do have the ability to be careful. If it was impossible, and Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't come to trip up anybody. So anything that's written in the Torah is doable. As you explained in Talmud, was that when a person constantly thinks about it, certainly be a tremendous benefit to protect himself and save himself from this Avera. He says another big benefit you'll have from learning these halachas. Says an important insight here. He says, by learning the halachas, I don't view this halacha as hefker, something that's I'm not responsible to worry about. I mentioned this before. And then if chas v'shalom, you slip once in a while. It's a mitzvah. I'm a mitzvah to keep it. I try to keep it. And then he says, if you slip up once in a while, Lashon Horah, you're not categorized as Bali Lashon. What's the difference? The Gemara says, again in Erechin, and the Gemara says that Lashon Horah is equal to the big three Averas. It's talking about Bali Lashon. In a case where a person is careful not to speak Lashon Horah, that it's not something that's like hefker, something that's okay to do, then if you slip once in a while, it's just a lav, like any other lav. It doesn't carry the severity that the Gemara gives it of being equal to the three big averas, and you're not makabel pnei shechina. So therefore, it's certainly important to learn these halachas so that at least I'm in the ballpark. Besides that, if you learn halachas, when you do slip, you know you did an avera. There's a special kind on Klal Yisrael that Yirmiyahu expresses when Klal Yisrael say, even though they're sinning, I didn't sin. But if I learn the halachas and I know I did something wrong, then I'll do tshuva and I won't say I didn't sin. And you'll go appease the person you spoke about, or at least you won't speak again against him. Unlike so, if chas v'shalom, you just throw this halacha, throw it over your back. It's not something I have to worry about. Then you're certainly in that group of Bali Lashon Horah that have all the severity of speaking that thing. Okay, so we caught up yesterday. We got started the psicha. We did ches tishrei because I didn't forgot about that. But let's go now to the Shmiras haLashon. We're there also. That's where I got confused. We started in any case ches tishrei. We'll do ches tishrei again. Okay. He says like this. He's responding to the different arguments that the Torah throws towards us about this halacha of Lashon Horah. He says, so this is all true. The Torah says, what's the use? Even if you accept it upon yourself, it won't last long. It's impossible. He says, even if the Torah is right, which he already said he's not right, but let's say it won't help that I'll accept upon myself not to speak Lashon Horah. That it won't help to be makabel on himself for the future, even for a few days. He says, when we think about it further, he says, you'll see that the argument of Yetzer Hara is a lie from the beginning. He says, because the proof is in the pudding. And it's time tested. If a person does want to work on it, the more he accustoms himself, he works on it, not speak Lashon Hara, it doesn't become harder by the day, it becomes easier by the day. He says because he'll catch himself. when he says something that's wrong, instead of what it used to be, that he didn't even notice that he was saying Lashon Horah, because he was so accustomed of speaking. People talk without thinking. They don't first say, 1 minute, what am I saying? Should I say it? They speak. So without learning the halachas, your second nature is just to speak. And it is a difficult thing not to say Lashon Horah. But if a person is makabel upon himself and starts working upon himself, 1 day, 2 days, he changes his nature, that second nature, and he starts being more aware of what he's saying and catching himself when he's saying something wrong. So once he broke his second nature, he broke his hergel, he will now find himself withholding himself from not speaking, from speaking Lashon Horah. Ago. He says, as far as establishing for myself that second nature of Shmiras haLashon, seems to me simple that the way to get there, so the first step, you can't accustom yourself not to speak Lashon Horah if you don't know what Lashon Horah is. So first, you got to learn the halachas thoroughly, review them, and now I mamash know halachas. So I should know which statements I'm not allowed to say. He says, and that's already half of the battle is done. Is if you sat and you learn the halachas well, and now you're very aware of what's asa and what's mutter, it's already most of what you used to say, you're not gonna say anymore. And then he says afterwards, even in Rak Yikra, he says, even if you set yourself every week, specific time to learn, it's gonna help a lot. Or maybe it means you'll set yourself a specific time every week not to speak Lashon Horah. Everything's based on the person's nature. There are those people people who need to scrutinize their deeper daily, and there are those who need to do it less. He says, but that's the easiest thing. He says that's the first thing is to learn the halachas very, very well. Even if there'll be a time where you can't control yourself from this thing, or you're working on yourself, but you suddenly realize that Yetzer Hara has beaten you a few times. Don't be worried. Don't give up. Because if you strengthen yourself now again, this and you'll win the next battle. And through your life, you should continue doing that. That's what the Gemara says in Brachas Lo'im Yargiz Adam Yetzer Hara. This Yargiz Adam Hanish Yasim Mechom Aloylam. You always need to be battling. Yetzer Hara, okay. All right.